Hi sewers, I'm Christine. If you're new in the group, welcome. And today I'm going to do a mini training with you for Focus Friday, and our focus today is knit fabric. So I've got this lovely pile of knits over here. I've got a little bit of everything in there. I've got some polar fleece, some scuba, cotton lycra, bonbon, ribbing, you name it. And I've also uploaded a stretch calculator for you, as well as this little half circle, which is nothing fancy. You can draw one yourself, that you're going to use to determine drape and the stretch percentage of fabric. Now, before we start, as a pattern drafter, when you draft a pattern, you use a set of measurements to draft the pattern, but then you also add or subtract numbers to those measurements. So if you're drafting a pattern for leggings, for example, you'll be subtracting quite a bit from your body measurements, because your leggings, of course, are going, oops, there goes my fabric, are going to stretch to fit your body. And anything you make with stretch fabric, it's going to stretch to fit your body. A t-shirt will stretch to fit your body. Even if it's something larger, but it's made with knit fabric, the element of stretch is very important in that sewing pattern. And when you're sewing with knits, many sewers are terrified of knits because the sewing patterns never work out. The drape is wrong. The recovery is wrong. Things I'm going to cover in this video. But the advice I always give is read the instructions on your sewing pattern. Any sewing pattern will tell you this pattern is drafted for, and then it will give you either fabric examples or it will give you fabric characteristics. So it might say something like a medium weight knit with good recovery and two-way stretch. And once you understand those concepts, you'll find that you can it will be much easier for you to choose different types of knit fabrics, and you won't be as confused when choosing a sewing pattern to go with the fabric as well. So in this video, in this little training, I'll be covering different types of knit fabrics first. Then I'll explain about determining the amount of stretch, choosing the fabric for the pattern, as well as the drape of the fabric. And these are 4 very important things when considering the fabric you will be using for a sewing pattern, because, and I think we might agree, you're not going to be using t-shirting to make a swimming costume. It's not going to work. The end result won't be what you hoped it would be. And if you want your final garment to look as it does on the picture on the sewing pattern, or on the models who are modeling the pattern, it's very important to understand your knit fabrics. So I hope this mini training is going to help you. I hope it will remove some of the fear of sewing with knits. It's not that scary, I promise you. I've been doing it for many, many years. And everyone in our membership, the second project in our sewing course and our sewing membership is actually sewing a t-shirt. I'm wearing mine today, and sewing a v-neck t-shirt with different types of fabric. And it's really easy once you know how. So off we go, and print out your stretch calculator. Keep it in your handbag if you need to. And I hope that this really helps you. The first thing I want to show you and demonstrate, hopefully you can see it clearly on the video, is that knits can be divided, as with any fabric, into lightweight, medium weight, and then stable knits. And it just means exactly what the word says. So I have a little pile of knit fabrics here that I'll be using for this whole presentation. And I haven't divided them up yet, because I want to show you as I go along how you can determine what type of fabric it is. So it's literally, fabric weighs a certain amount. Fabric has weight, and you may have a coat or a jacket or something that's very, very heavy, and that would be a heavyweight fabric. And you also might have seen, especially if you shop online, you might have seen descriptions for fabric, like things like 220 GSM or 180 GM. That all means the same. It means grams per square meter or grams per meter. And 220 is 220 grams and 180 is 180 grams, which you might not have known, but then very logically that just means how thick the fabric is, how heavy it is. So if I compare this fabric Let me try and show you. You can see it's much thinner. This is a cut and sew. This is a very thin and light fabric compared to this piece of scuba over there. You can see that's a heavier fabric. So we don't really talk about heavyweight. We usually talk about stable knits. So that's a piece of scuba is a stable knit. And then this, which is a piece of cut and sew, you can see it's completely see-through when you stretch it slightly, is a very lightweight knit. It's light, it's soft, and we'll get to stretch in a little bit. Okay, so this one you can see is also quite light. This is a piece of Viscose Lycra. It's thin, it's very light and soft, and that's also a lightweight. This is a popular fabric in South Africa. I don't know what it's called overseas. I think it might be called ITY. This is Bonbon. I hardly ever sew with Bonbon. I actually bought this just to try and sew with it, and I didn't like it. It's a very high polyester content, but it is very thin and lightweight, and you can see if you stretch it, it does become a little bit see-through. So you're not going to be making leggings from that, obviously. I'm just categorizing them quickly. And I just want to talk so you can just see visually what type of fabrics they are. This is it doesn't have a lot of stretch in it. I made a dress out of this. This is a type of a ponte. It has a texture in it that you can see. It's a type of a ponte. You might have heard of Ponte de Roma. It's great for leggings and for stable pants. This is a more stable knit. Almost medium weight, but a little bit more stable. And then here we have a piece of swim lycra. This is for swimwear. It's a thinner lycra, but it's very, very stretchy. There you go. And that, can you guess, is lightweight. It's very light. So if you have 5 meters of that and you have 5 meters of this, the weight will be very different. And then I've put these in here that people often forget. Sewists often forget these are actually also knits because they are stretchy. And this is polar fleece. Look how now fluffy, and polar fleece stretches. It does. Doesn't stretch too much, but it is a bit more of a stable knit. And this one is cotton tracksuiting. Not a lot of stretch in it, but it's also more stable. And then one of my favorite fabrics for winter, this is called brushed DTY. If you're on any overseas groups, you'll see that they call it double brushed poly. This is a polyester spandex, and I'll talk about spandex and lycras when we do stretch percentage. It's a polyester spandex. It's very, very soft. It's not very see-through, and because it's high polyester content, the print doesn't fade. So you'll notice with cottons the print fades a lot, but with polyester the sublimation ink, or the ink that they use to print on it, actually lasts longer. And I like it as well because it's easy to figure out which is the right and the wrong side. And this is classified as a medium weight knit. Finally, we're getting to the mediums. And the mediums are the ones, medium and lightweight are ones we actually use very often. This is a horrible piece of fabric. Beautiful color. This is a rib knit, but it's not a very good quality rib knit. I have another one. Oh, there we go. This isn't a very good quality rib knit, and I'll explain why when I get to knit recovery. But this is also a medium weight knit. And then I love this fabric. This is very popular. This is bullet knit, or very similar to scuba crepe. I made a dress out of this. It is very warm. It's maybe too hot. I wouldn't wear it in summer. You can make leggings out of this. This is also a stable knit. Then I have some more. These are all from my scrap box, by the way, so you can see how often I sew with knits. Most of the time I'm using knits. Okay, this is a very general knit that we find quite often. this is t-shirting. It's often called t-shirting. I don't like to call it t-shirting because t-shirts are most of the time are not only made out of this. You get a lot of cotton lycra t-shirts. So this is actually called single jersey because you can see it only stretches, doesn't stretch both ways. It stretches a little bit that way and then more in this direction. And you can actually see the grain over there. And this is a medium weight knit. It's not as thin as these. These are all medium weights that I'm working with now. Here is a much better quality rib knit. This is great. I've actually made leggings out of these for my kiddo. And they're nice and warm and it's a bit thicker. And if you compare it to this ribbing, so not all fabric is made equal. If you compare the quality, I wish you could feel this. This is a higher quality and this is also a medium weight knit. So that's a ribbing. This one is one of my absolute favorites to work with, cotton lycra. And this is a good quality cotton lycra. This is 200 grams about. So it's thicker. 220 is much thicker. Or you get 240 as well. And if you stretch it, it's not see-through. This is perfect for leggings and t-shirts and underwear. This is a great fabric for that because it's cotton, it's breathable, it keeps its shape, and it's nice and stretchy. So you can see it stretches in both directions. And then another piece of t-shirting over here of single jersey, just the plain white. This has a little bit of a pattern, you might call it, and you'll see sometimes it's called slab, viscose slab or single jersey slab, and it has a slight stretch that way and more of a stretch this way. This is also a medium weight knit. Another characteristic of knits that you need to understand is the concept of stretch percentage as well as drape. Now, drape means just that. If you think of curtains, how it hangs. And sewing patterns won't give you a percentage of drape, but they'll tell you something with a good drape is soft. It hangs softly. So here I have just a little half circle to demonstrate. If I hang this cut and sew, you can see it all hangs to the middle, which means it has a good drape. Whereas if I hang the scuba, you can see how it hangs more across the circle. So it doesn't fall to the middle, which means it doesn't have such a good drape. That is what makes it a stable knit. You can compare the drape of anything in this way using the same size. There you can see cotton lycra doesn't have, sort of straighten it, the good drape of the cut and sew, for example, but it's relatively soft. It falls relatively softly and it's got a little bit of a drape over there. But if you're making something that you want to hang very softly on you, like a cardigan, then you want good drape, as opposed to perhaps you're making a circle skirt that you'd like it to be a little stiffer as you wear it. Then you might, so there you can see, if you were making perhaps a gathered skirt or something, it would stand up a little bit more. Look, it's even standing up as I hold it up, which will never happen, for example, with a piece of this. This would make a completely different, the effect is completely different. Soft. Okay. And the most important thing is that you read your sewing pattern. So your sewing pattern will tell you require, I'm going to make this up now, two-way stretch, medium stretch, good drape fabric. Say you're making a dress. Okay. You're making a dress and maybe it needs good recovery. Those are your 4 criteria that you need for your sewing pattern. Now, what you need to understand is a sewing pattern, as I said earlier, is drafted with a specific fabric in mind. So this sewing pattern, to me, it says it is probably drafted for something along the lines of cotton lycra, DTY, and perhaps even you could use something like Bonbon or Viscose Lycra. I would not use one of these. And I know this because I've spent most of my sewing journey sewing with knits, but you can determine that easily, and you can download this. I've already loaded this file. This is a stretch calculator, and it's very easy to use. I actually take one of these with me, even though I understand the concept of stretch. When you're standing in the fabric shop and you're trying to test a piece of fabric on the roll, sometimes you aren't focusing, or you forget how much stretch you need on your fabric. So I actually take this with me, and we're going to use the knits section, and we're going to measure the stretch of these fabrics. Now, higher stretch is not always better, and I'll explain how that works in a moment. But for something like this, say you're making a dress now, you need two-way stretch, medium stretch, good drape, and good recovery. Two-way stretch very simply means your fabric stretches in two directions. So it stretches this way and it stretches that way. Now, it won't always stretch the same amount in both directions. If it's something like Lycra, it probably will. Lycra is very high stretch. There you can see, and it stretches vertically and horizontally. Two-way stretch, sometimes called four-way stretch, very confusing, I know, means your fabric stretches vertically and horizontally. In America, it's called four-way stretch. Don't ask me why. I suppose left, right, up, and down. And then medium stretch. It needs a certain stretch percentage, which means on this little stretch calculator, a piece of fabric this size with your fabric edge placed over there where it says fabric edge needs to be able to comfortably stretch to the medium stretch line easily. See, I'm not forcing it. Where this I might need to force, which is a t-shirting. It will, but look at that. I have to really, really force it there. So you want it to comfortably stretch, very easily stretch to your medium stretch line. And then you can also see it needs to have good recovery. Good recovery means it jumps back easily and it doesn't leave any markings. So DTY would work, yes. Then we have viscose. Let's see what our viscose looks like. It has two-way stretch and it easily stretches there. I don't like how the color stretches out. So if you're making something a bit more fitted, you might not like that effect. There you can see the pattern's fading and it's a bit more see-through when it stretches that much. And then it's got good recovery, no bubbling. It looks good after stretching out. Let's test our Bonbon. Bonbon also has two-way stretch. There we go. And it stretches easily, very easily to the medium stretch line. And it has good recovery as well. And then the last one, also cotton lycra. Cotton lycra, very easy to stretch, medium stretch. Perhaps not as easy this one because it's a bit thicker, but it still has a good recovery. It's a little bit between medium and low stretch over there, but the recovery is what I'm after. So those four fabrics will work for your criteria. Now, obviously, your pattern gives suggestions. If you look at the sewing pattern over here, it actually gives you a suggestion that says sized for stretch knits. This is a sewing pattern. Please focus. Okay, and there it says sized for stretch knits only, swimwear fabrics, spandex blend, two-way stretch. So there it already gives you criteria on what stretch fabric you need to use. Now, spandex blend, spandex means recovery. Spandex is this magical fabric that helps your material bounce back. And I'm going to actually ruin a piece of fabric quickly here. It doesn't matter. So if I compare this spandex and I stretch it to the max, okay? There you go. Look, it looks the same as it did when I started. But if I take this piece of t-shirting, stretch it to the max, look at that. It starts bubbling. Same with this ribbing. That's why I said I don't like this ribbing. Stretch it to the max. Look there. Look at those horrible bubbles. You can iron this. You can do whatever you like. That won't return. But then I've got a high spandex knit. Stretch to the max. Bounces back. Sure, the edges are curling. But remember, when you've got your clothing sewn together, your edges won't curl. And that's what it means when it says you need good recovery, which is very important for things like leggings. You don't want your leggings to make these, you know those old pants that do that at your knees. You don't want that. That's horrible. So good recovery is very important as well. I've already explained drape, and then the direction of stretch. And the reason the direction of stretch is important, if this is something like a legging, it's drafted to stretch up and down as well, even just a little bit. When you're drafting a leggings pattern, you subtract a certain amount from the leg length because you want that pattern to be very fitted to the body. Now, if you're using something with only two-way stretch, like polar fleece, for example, yes, you can make polar fleece leggings. Ask me how I know. It has no vertical stretch. It only has horizontal stretch. Your pants are going to be too short. They might fit around your body, but they won't fit in length, which means crotch length, leg length, they're all going to be off. Okay, another sewing pattern that I'm going to show you the fabric requirement for. This was a fun one, and this is something I've always wanted to do. This is actually one of my own patterns. Okay, the stretch pants. So these pants that I drafted are for have been drafted for a lower stretch knit. And the reason I did that is I actually wanted pants that I could easily make out of polar fleece, and I could easily make out of ponte or scuba, but I didn't want the hassle of a yoke at the back and zip and the whole skinny jean feeling. So on this pattern, when we tested this pattern, we tested a whole lot of fabrics. We tested spandex and lycra and low stretch, and it worked best in a low stretch fabric. It did work in cotton lycra, but we had to make smaller sizes for that because the pattern is made for low stretch fabric. So this pattern is drafted for knits. It can be made using low stretch fabrics like stretch denim, ponte, scuba, and Oxford, or using medium stretch fabrics like bengaline and bullet knit. Okay, now low stretch fabric with a one-way stretch was necessary for this, which was our scuba, bullet, and ponte fabrics. And I'm on my way to make a pair of polar fleece ones for this freezing cold weather. Now, the low stretch requirement is the main requirement for this pattern to fit properly. Okay, there you can see if I stretch it to medium, it's too much. Low stretch, definitely low stretch, and low stretch. And do you see that all these low stretch fabrics have low drape, low drape, low drape, low drape, as well as being stable knits, which stable and low drape, that basically go together. So once you understand the different categories of knits, it will be much easier for you to choose the right fabric for the right project, because it is always best to choose a fabric that goes with the pattern drafting, the way the pattern has been drafted. That is always important. But you might want to play around, and that's what makes sewing wonderful, is that we can play around with fabrics. I might want to make leggings out of polar fleece. Then I need to understand how much stretch percentage I need. And sometimes you walk in the fabric shop, you see a fabric you absolutely love, but it's not the cotton lycra that or the bonbon that the pattern said you need, then you can test on your stretch calculator, and remembering whether it's stable, whether it has a good drape, you can test whether this fabric will work for your sewing pattern. And then also keep in mind things like, how will this fabric look after a few wears? So this is a scuba, for example, and if I stretch it a lot, it still bounces back. Scuba is indestructible. It doesn't tear, it doesn't unravel. Good quality scuba, that is. But polar fleece, on the other hand, it's a bit iffy. There you can see it doesn't have that great recovery. So if I'm making leggings out of this, I'll end up with, little bumps at my knees and things, where the other stable knits have very good recovery. That's it from me for today, sewers. I hope that I've helped you, and I hope that you've gained some confidence in sewing with